Minute is rated R. The Rocky Horror Picture Show is also rated R. We're going to spend this time discussing the movie in gory detail, and along the road we will talk about some adult content and use some of our favorite swear words.
Jian Ho, Wan Batan, Lu Mao Zi.
Consider yourselves warned. Welcome to Rocky Horror Minute, the podcast where we talk about the Rocky Horror Picture Show, one 60-second unit at a time. I'm your host, Leandra.
And I'm your other host, Kelly.
And we've said goodbye to Oscar in the way most befitting. We sent him out into the woods where he will either be murdered by Perry Bedden or find out where everyone else from the wedding party went. Hopefully we hear from him again, but if not, I hope he fought well.
Forever in our hearts, Oscar. So, in this minute, we continue Damn It, Janet, the song in which Brad has just proposed to Janet. It begins where Janet was screaming, "It's nicer than Betty Munroe had." That's where we start. And then she says, "Now we're engaged, and I'm so glad that you met Mom and you know Dad. I have one thing to say, and that's, Brad, I'm mad for you too." And then there's some lovey-dovey back and forth during the chorus, and they begin to do a strange little waltz at the end. And Brad says, "There's just one thing left to do. Let's go see the man who began it. When we met in his science exam, it made me give you the eye and then panic. I have one thing to say, and that's, damn it, Janet, I love you." As they enter the church, though, we're going to see they enter into the church at the beginning of the minute and slowly slide up the aisle together. Well, Brad's walking and Janet is doing a weird sliding motion.
They're normal.
Yeah, they're very normal. I guess simulating a wedding march on one of their parts, but it's strange. And yeah, more importantly, though, I think, is we see Richard O'Brien and Patricia Quinn as their usher or not usher characters. I always thought they were ushers because they clearly work in this church, and they bring out a coffin.
Have you ever
Right?
ushed before? Have they had you take care of coffins
I guess.
whilst ushing?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I guess, but like a church janitor wouldn't bring in a coffin, right?
Well, there's nothing in the coffin, so there's a lot that's confusing about this. They're on a very tight budget. They couldn't even get a fucking corpse for their fake funeral.
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, more importantly, we see Little Nell for the first time, who's also one of these characters who I guess is a very normal position in a church that cleans it and carries the coffins in for the funeral happening directly after the wedding, moments after the guests leave. So Little Nell, who will later play Columbia, is there wiping some pews and then carrying a coffin.
And that's just so confusing to me. Like, why is she there? Why is she dressed like this? She doesn't have the same ShamWow that Pat Quinn has. She has just a white, it almost looks like a pocket square. So
Yeah.
if it weren't for the fact that she is wiping down pews, you could almost think that she is perhaps a mourner, but she's not. She clearly is supposed to be helping in some capacity. Best not to think it over too much.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that for a church this size, I'm amazed at the budget they have for a maintenance crew. 3 people is impressive.
Oh, for sure.
Considering I've attended many churches in my life, and I believe that not a single one of them had somebody on staff for that.
Yeah, the closest that I can think of is we have a mutual friend whose dad does a lot of the maintenance work at their church in Ohio, and they keep going, "Oh, can we throw you some money for doing that?" And he says, "No, because then you'll expect me to do this."
Just another strange detail of this world, I guess. But it took me a long time to come around to the idea that these were not Riff, Magenta, and Columbia doing recon on Brad and Janet for some reason.
And there are plenty of people that feel very strongly that that's what they're doing, but if they're doing recon, I feel like there'd be better ways to do this.
Yeah, I mean, again, the thing that changed my mind about that was when I realized that all of the Transylvanians were also in the wedding scene, or most of them. I do not think the Transylvanians were their actual relatives in the wedding party, so that made me just come around to the idea that it was all just double casting. But anyway, I would like to draw some attention to the texture on Barry Bostwick's shirt, which I had never noticed until I was analyzing this minute closely. That is a gay shirt.
It is very, very detailed. You have this like diamond or flat flower pattern that is in a stripe down each side of the front of the shirt, and
And it's like satiny.
it is,
It's gay.
and it's definitely a choice that Sue Blaine made.
Especially to pair that with plaid, it's just power clashing.
But is it the worst that she's done even yet?
No, I would say not, because we've seen Ralph's suit, his
That is
tux for his
true.
own wedding. Nothing, honestly, nothing in the movie looks worse than that, in my opinion. Everything else looks at least deliberate and not like he just had to do like a supermarket sweep style run through Goodwill to get his wedding outfit.
Oh man, I love Supermarket Sweep. That should be season 2.
Supermarket sweep minute. That would be fun to listen to for everyone. But yeah, so that was and I also, so I've been checking out the commentary that Richard O'Brien and Patricia Quinn did for the movie. Been learning a lot of things, and they were talking throughout this entire minute about how well Barry Bostwick and Susan Sarandon fit in with the group right away. They were not so sure about them because they didn't know them before they brought them on this movie. Everybody else was had known each other from either the show or productions of Hair they had been in or what have you. So a lot of people had worked together before, but they said Barry and Susan fit right in with the crowd right from the beginning and were like super fun and like game for anything. I was really pleased to hear them speaking so fondly of them.
Oh, they're a family.
Yeah. Sometimes a family can be one Richard O'Brien and a bunch of people that he cast in his weird movie.
It takes a hair cast to raise a family.
Yeah. And we've talked about this in a previous minute about how the church was not a real church but was a set. Just to be clear, there's some movie magic going on because it really is just they only could afford to build like one end and then the other end. So that's why you only see those two shots of the church. They've got the front side and the back side. There was not, the set was not built in a three-dimensional way like that.
So, what I found interesting was it almost it almost seems like they did have access to a church for some of this, but
Oh.
they just couldn't afford to have more than like one shot of it. And the reason that I say that is there's just some very weird details, particularly in the narthex, also known as the foyer or the vestibule of
Oh,
the church.
wow, architecture minute.
It's true. Really, really strap in. I'm about to go full on Episcopalian architecture with you.
Okay.
So in that space, there's a bunch of pamphlets and what I think is a calendar on the bulletin board, along with some two other random things on the bulletin board. On the back wall, there's a plaque that says "Our Father," and I'm guessing it continues into the Lord's Prayer. And just the wood paneling right as you get into the church is just absolutely gorgeous. And I really tried to make make sense of why they would put so much detail into this specific part, and I don't think they did.
You mean you don't think they put a lot of thought into it, or?
No, what I mean is in at least one of the sources that I've been reading through, it does look like they had access to a church,
Oh,
but
I see.
not for a large amount of time, and certainly not for the entirety of the church. So they, I guess, inexplicably chose to only show the beginning part of this one specific church. And before you ask, I have no fucking idea if that's true, and I have no fucking idea where it was. I I would love to be able to tell you. It's probably somewhere in LA, but
Yeah.
who knows?
Um, it's a hunt for the church.
My dad actually texted me earlier today to say that he's been listening to the podcast, and
Oh
his
God.
his major takeaway was, I guess you're right about the Episcopal Church. I mean, I guess it's on a back lot, but all the architecture's correct. So, if you're curious where I got this sense of, no, the people must know stupid fucking details, it's genetic, for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, hi, Mr. Leandra. Thanks for listening.
Yep, it's my last name as well.
Yeah. Your parents suck for that one. But
It's true.
yeah, so that's all really interesting stuff. But yeah, the Richard O'Brien and Patricia Quinn talked quite a bit about the church set as well. I think they did a great job of making it look like. I mean, I never for a moment suspected it was not a physical building they were in or around at any point until we started doing this podcast.
I think that my favorite kind of behind the scenes and promo shots from the Mick Rock book are the ones where they've used the church as their backdrop for things. So you see pictures of Frankenfurter in full sweet transvestite garb in the church. And that's just so strange, but also wonderful.
You know what that reminds me of is so Leandra and I do some community theater together. Leandra is a very accomplished community theater actress and director,
Uh,
etc.
sure. We'll go with that.
um and we did a production of Hedda Gobbler, and one of our Rocky cast members was playing live piano for it. And basically we had a Hedda show at 8, and we had to get to the theater and do Rocky by like 11ish. So she was playing Frank that night as well as playing piano for our show. So she was in the church in full Frank makeup playing piano behind the scenes for this very different type of play. So anyway, shout out to Corinne. That was still one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. I mean, the idea that like the audience at the play had no idea that somebody was behind the scenes dressed as Frank playing the piano
Yeah,
absolutely
she was
killed me.
behind a curtain.
Yeah.
It was just so great.
Yeah. Little
But
secret for those of us on the cast.
one of my favorite things to do when I'm not directing a play in a community theater production, but I'm in the show, is if I'm not doing something else, I'm just kind of wandering around playing with makeup for Rocky. So we were doing a production of Twelfth Night, and I had a lot of downtime. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna figure out how to get rid of my eyebrows. So I'm just wandering around the back of the sanctuary, rubbing a glue stick into my face, and people are like, "Leandra, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine. This is normal."
So, did you have any other notes on the minute?
Do I have any other notes on
Yeah,
the
I
minute?
know.
Kelly.
I know.
Yeah, just a few, I say, while pulling up my index of ridiculous notes. Couple of things that I noticed that were just really fun kind of things to get thrown in there. The flowers that Riff and Magenta are cleaning right at the beginning of this minute that
Yeah.
look
Also
white.
Triffids, by the way.
They're also triffids, it's true. Tell your friends. They look pretty normal. They're on like a white pedestal. They're very kind of bright, weddingy flowers. And then they walk away and spin them, and they turn around on the pedestal, and you see that they're on the other side, black, like mourning flowers, and it's very practical, I'm sure. I would
Yeah.
love to go to that church that goes like, "You know what? No. No. We do not need all of these fucking flowers. We're gonna get one, and we're gonna spin it for whatever we need it for."
Yeah, I mean, the efficiency, whoever's running this church is like the master of booking. Like the idea that like there was not a minute wasted before they start setting up for the funeral.
The next thing that I absolutely just boggles my mind. Janet runs into this church and she declares that this ring is nicer than Betty Munroe had. And sh like, first off, just who is her target audience? Who is she telling this to? And why is that the very first thing that you can think of to say? What sort of gold digging bitch is Janet?
I know. I love that because like that's another great example of characterization of Janet. Like she does not give a shit about anything else. Oh, I there's our co-host Yin chiming in. The cat. Sorry about that everybody. She's annoying. But
Yin
yeah,
only meows when we say something stupid. So
yeah.
if you hear her, that's kind of the cue.
Yeah. She's
Yeah.
unfortunately meowing right now as she intently gazes at one of my snakes in its terrarium, and I very much hope that this is not her about to finally pounce for the tank the way she's been thinking of doing for a couple of weeks now.
Is this gypsum?
This is gypsum, yes. A ball python. I have a super Mojave for any snake fans in the audience. But yeah, um, I will absolutely have to murder a cat on the air if she tries to get my snake.
Just kidding,
Anyway,
Rita. That would never happen.
yeah.
Sure.
Oh, the characterization of Janet as a gold digging bitch. Yes. Love it. I mean, and right before this minute started, we saw her literally, as soon as she got the ring on her finger, burst through the doors of the church and allow her new fiance to fall on his face. And the entire time he's talking to her, she's literally staring at the ring and like moving it so it catches the light and basically ignoring him altogether. So,
Well, his part is done.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And I can only wonder if that's the reason that when you see Magenta, Riff Raff, and Columbia go down the aisle ahead of Brad and Janet, you see Patricia Quinn's face as she walks past, and just this look of absolute revulsion is on her face. I would hope that she is reacting to the bullshittery of Janet.
Yeah.
Richard O'Brien is very non-emotional for this, and Nell just looks like she's genuinely sad. So very interesting. I'd love to know what the director told them to do, if told them to do anything. We already talked a little bit about how Janet and Brad walk down this aisle, and it's supposed to look kind of like a wedding-esque walk. To me, it looks like Janet is just dragging Brad in his 3-foot erection down the aisle, and it's just
I
I
think you're
don't
giving Brad way too much credit there.
I don't know. People who have had sex with Uncle Barry, please let us know.
Yeah. Or Uncle Barry, send us a pic. We'll post it on the Rocky Horror Minute Instagram.
Yeah,
Yeah.
tasteful or not, I'm
Yeah,
fine.
no need for tasteful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely could see that interpretation of it as well.
And then, of course, when they switch to to the view of kind of the end of the sanctuary, we see so many just very neat details. There are two overhead chandelier style lights. There's a large Bible on a stand facing the pews, turned to a page with a picture. I'm guessing, just based off of where it is in the Bible, that it's probably like a picture of the crucifixion. There's a US flag in the corner of the stage, and on the other side there's a cross on a stick next to the lectern, which is kind of kind of a pulpit. It's if the pulpit is on the house right of the stage for those of us who do theater. and there's this very basic altar right in the middle of the stage, and also another big Bible. I guess you can't have enough Bibles in a church, and they're very ornate. You already told our listeners about the fact that we do community theater. We've done a lot of shows in churches, and
Yes.
one of the things that I do is I'm one of the people who reaches out to churches and says, "Hi, we're not that weird. Can we be in your church and doing theater? It's normal, trust me." After they say, "Yeah, come on and take a look," I sent Dan over to actually see if it's a viable place. And if I sent him to this church, he would look at that stage setup and go, "No, we can't do anything with that. How do people get on the stage? How do people get off the stage? Why are there so many
How do people get
steps?"
off on the stage?
And it's
Most
just
important.
it's very narrow too.
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. Also, there's way too much shit you'd have to move off of it to do your show. Not moving that gigantic flag. The flag stood out to me too when I first was watching this. I was like, I don't think any church I've ever been in had a giant American flag on the altar, but then I remembered this was Texas, and I was like, actually, it's more unrealistic that it also didn't have a giant Texas flag on the altar
Yeah.
in that case.
And with
But I
that, I
think,
guess you're right.
yeah, I think that may have been us. Richard O'Brien likes to subtly poke fun at certain aspects of American culture
What?
in I know. So I think that might have been a choice to just be like show how like hyper patriotic and like white bread, red-blooded American town Denton is. Again, we'll get way more into that in Shock Treatment Minute, where we'll learn all about Denton and its
Uh,
values. Oh my god.
so there
Leandra is literally gonna kill herself and me.
just you,
Okay,
because
that's
I do
better.
need to get Supermarket Sweep Minute
Yeah, that's
off
true.
the ground.
Yeah. Who, if you could have anyone, who would be your co-host for Supermarket Sweep Minute?
Oscar, if he's still alive.
Yeah, he's not. But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, let's move on.
So there are a couple of things that I wasn't able to thoroughly figure out about this church setup. For instance, there are some hymns on the little hymn board at the front of the sanctuary. It's super hard to read, at least from what I was looking at. And it looks like the top hymn is either 426 or maybe 420. And the middle one is 267, I think. And the bottom one is 387, like maybe. And
Yeah.
I can't reference that with anything else because it's really based off of whatever hymn book they're working with. And just the final piece of church architecture to get into, it's in this minute that Riff Raff, Magenta, and Columbia exit the sanctuary and go into the sacristy, which is just a fancy word for religious object storage. And they come back out with a very short, very light coffin with a wreath on it, and it has silver handles, and they place it on fancy sawhorses.
Yes.
I don't know what
Yeah.
that is supposed to indicate. Perhaps this is a fake funeral. Maybe they're setting up for just in case they have a funeral so they know what it should look like. I have no idea. We've both been in a lot of churches and been in their sacristies a lot because we often use that as the kind of green room before we go on stage in a church. And I've never seen any size of coffin back there. But I haven't
Yeah.
been in an Episcopal church. Hmm.
Yeah, that is, I believe, a hallmark of the Episcopalian faith is that you have to put out a large empty coffin for all services.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah.
But it's not even
Yeah.
that large. It's like 3 bodies widths wide. So it's almost like maybe the size of like a child's coffin, which is just such a weird, macabre thing to have,
Yeah, that's true. It's not that big.
which is something that I'm sure you've said a lot.
Yes. Unfortunately so. But so there you go. I don't think I had anything else notes wise. I have some callbacks.
The only other thing to throw out there is right as you go into that little storage area, the sacristy, there's what looks like a circular something or other on the wall. At first I thought maybe it's a thermostat or maybe a doorbell, which would be kind of weird, but I think after looking at it for another several minutes, it might even be a light switch. Lots of details in this one. I'm really happy that they spent all of their budget on making sure that this church looked great.
It's definitely a very careful set, as a lot of the sets are, in that they put a lot of work into it and a lot of detail. So I think that's something that we'll see throughout the rest of the movie as well.
Oh,
In fact,
definitely.
the next set we're gonna see is full of strange details.
It sure is. Some of them make sense and some of them do not.
Yeah, but of course that's for a future minute. Just a little
So,
teaser.
talk me through some of your favorite callbacks.
So there aren't as many in this one, or at least not that I know. Of course, people often will be saying Janet or Obrad along with the ushers or whatever they are, or they'll sometimes say slut and asshole in their place. Um, I when she says it's nicer than Betty Monroe had. Now we're engaged, and I'm so glad that you met mom and you know dad. I often hear people sing along that you fucked mom and you blow dad instead. So that's fun. Pretty classic one, I think. When he says, when we met in his science examit, people frequently will say, what the fuck's an examit? Which is one of my favorite ones because honestly, until I heard that callback, I hadn't given that lyric a lot of thought, and I thought an examit was an actual thing. Like I don't know, a term for something school related. I don't know, I was a kid. But that's that's what I thought, and indeed it is perhaps a little on the lazy side to cram those together in for the sake of a rhyme. But then again, Janet's not that easy to rhyme with.
So you talked about that you fucked mom and you blow dad. The beginning of that one, when I first started going, was Janet comes in and goes, "Oh, it's nicer than sucking on gonads."
Oh my god, I've never heard
And
that.
I don't know, that's the part that I like more.
That is, I mean, that's actually really funny. But no, I've never heard that. That's
And
great.
then while they're doing the kind of dragging Brad down to the altar, the thing, it's, "Oh, Brad, oh shit, I'm pregnant. Oh shit." It's the
Yeah.
words, "I want a divorce,"
Okay.
and it's a little confusing, but I like that it at least ends the theme of infidelity ruining their relationship, perhaps foreshadowing.
That's true.
And
And sometimes when someone's carrying out the coffin, I will hear someone scream, "What's in the
what's in
box?"
the box?
Which is a reference to a movie I haven't seen. But it's a reference to Seven, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It's a good
I know the
movie.
reference, but not the movie. Yeah, I'll watch it at some point. I mean, I'm kind of tied up watching 1 minute of the Rocky Horror Picture Show every day. So
You have missed my favorite silly callback in this minute, and
I would love to
that's
hear it.
when people are screaming, "What's in the box?" or "Show me a baby coffin," or something like that. Uh, Brad is walking over to that area with such purpose, and he goes, uh, "And go pick my nose and then fling it." And
Oh,
it
gross.
really lines up well with him pointing in that direction, but it kind of points right past his nose and out into the world. So it looks like that's a conveyable thing that occurred. It's some good stuff, people. Just trust me on this.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that that is it for this minute. Do you have anything else for me?
I can't say that I do.
All right. Tune in next time for the stunning conclusion of Damn It, Janet. But let's go ahead and end this like we end all of our shows. Now, you
Now, you
don't
don't
have to
have to
go
go
home, but
home,
you
but you
can't
can't
stay
stay
here.
here, so
So
get
get
the
the
fuck
fuck
out.
out.